I know you have exposed the city of Fort Smith of essentially conducting business in private. You have also said that you think that this is happening all across Arkansas and government agencies where people are using email to talk about state business or government business without the public's knowledge. Just kind of update us on what got you started and then kind of go to where we are now, please.
Well, what got me started, I guess, was the lack of transparency by the Fort Smith School Board when they took away our Southern heritage, when they took away the Fort Smith Southside mascot, and just started looking at local entities and how they were basically doing business without the public's eye on it. Recently, Judge Fitzhugh signed a summary judgment order in which the Fort Smith board was doing their business by secret email. Even more recent, Mansfield was caught with their hand in the cookie jar when they were trying to remove the powers of the mayor, and I sent a FOIA request, and lo and behold, guess what? They were trying to remove powers secretly also, but this time it was by way of text messages. A couple of nights ago, they agreed that they had violated FOIA, and today I expect that Judge Tabor will sign another order stating that Mansfield violated FOIA by secret emails without giving notice to the public. So just in this area alone, there's three FOIA violations with court orders now. And there's no question, Paul, it's happening across the state. Now the city of Fort Smith, in their infinite wisdom, wants to create an email dump where they can go back and forth on these emails and dump them into a repository. And that's a violation of FOIA, too. So if they want to go down that route, unfortunately, it looks like they're going to be making more front-page news because they're going to get sued for a FOIA violation again. Professor Robert Steinbuck has written an opinion on the subject and says that if you're going to have an email dump, then you still have to have proper notice to the public, and the public is entitled to monitor live the email or text message meetings. And so,
oh wow, so we need like a live chat going on then.
Right.
In order for it to be legal, they're going to basically have to have a chat room where they do all their business. That's what you're saying? Yeah. They want to have all these emails and then dump them into a repository. We tried to get on it yesterday, and it takes a computer degree to try to get into it. But irrespective of that, it's a violation of FOIA. And Judge Fitzhugh signed an order that said, don't let it happen again, Fort Smith. And it looks like they're either getting bad advice or want to test my resolve and the citizens of Fort Smith's resolve. So, gosh, I got to think. I mean, listen, I think our Freedom of Information Act is great. And I think when there is no transparency in government, that's when the people's voice, gets diminished. That's when special interests get served. It's where liberty dies. So I really commend you on what you're doing. I bet you there's city employees across the state listening to this thinking, well, what does that mean? Does that mean we can't email? So can you talk a little bit about that? What can they do on email that's not a violation of the Freedom of Information Act?
Well, for example, they can send out information. I mean, we're not trying to prevent for example, our city administrator from sending information to the city board where they can look at it. But what we don't want happening is private email discussion. The court has plainly said that we're entitled to not only see the result, we're also entitled.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we're building a liberty machine, and we want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us. The number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Or feel free to log on to Facebook.com/Conduit News. Man, I feel like, does anyone say log on anymore? Anyway. Feel free to just, go to Facebook.com/Conduit News or search for Conduit News in your Facebook app, and you can watch us do the program live. Man, I got to tell you, we've got some interesting news, some developments. I mean, everything from the tax reform to the Ten Commandments to, well, I guess at 7:33, I was thinking a lot. We're going to talk about this at 7:33, but I was thinking a lot about the healthcare lobby last night, and I was thinking a lot about how, well, let me just say it. There are those people out there who will throw out accusations of lying, and they never will point to specific. Gosh, it's early. Specific, provable lies. Like, which lie? What are you talking about? Like, and they never really can. They can't point out to it. They can't cite it. They can't say, because at Conduit News we expose the liars. So I really started thinking about this, and in the concept of what is truth and what is not truth, and I just want you guys to know that if you are seeking the facts, if you are seeking now there's some people that don't want to do that. There's some people that don't want to seek. It's almost like they don't have eyes to see. But if you are out there and you are seeking the truth, then this program, let it be a conduit where the free flow of information, all the way from the Marble Palace through the radio airwaves or through the internet, where it is there for you, and we are there for you, and we appreciate it. And as a matter of fact, for all of you people out there who are listening to the program, who are listening right now, it would mean the world to me personally if you would go on your social media platform of choice and tell your friends that you listen to this program. It would mean the world to me if you would do that today. And feel free to tag Conduit News or whatever, or link to the program or link to the website or whatever. But I would just ask that of you. I would love for you guys to go to your social media platform of choice and just say, hey, that you're listening out there. Again, the phone number 870-275-9799. Let's start with a report on the task force on taxes this morning. Family Council, this was posted by Jerry Cox. Family Council has a report. Now, this is great. I really love the fact that Family Council is doing what they've always done, yet the perception is Family Council is somehow getting outside of their mission, because people assume that Family Council is only a pro-life organization when in fact they are a pro-family organization, and so they look at issues like higher taxes hurting families. Interesting that higher taxes would be a moral issue, and I mean, of course it is. A lot of politicians don't like to see it that way, but it clearly is, because taxes are a burden. Taxes are a form of oppression. Government is a necessary evil, and we do pay taxes to fund those things. I'm not in favor of paying no tax. I think there's a method in which you do support this, what George Washington, our first president, called a necessary evil. But the fact is that excessive taxation was one of the reasons that we fought a war against the British. So keep that in mind. The concept of oppressing people and oppressing families has been ingrained through tax policy, has been ingrained in this country all the way back in the 18th century. So remember that. Now, Family Council reports that yesterday morning, the Arkansas Tax Reform and Relief Task Force met at the Capitol in Little Rock. Among the items on the task force's agenda is a proposal to tax investments, passive income, and sales by churches. Now, they're also now, by the way, looking at property tax, studying property tax. Now, the reason they're studying property tax is because we don't have a statewide property tax. And Jan Morgan's presence in the Republican primary, you had the Hutchinson campaign that was very worried about the outcome of this election. They did not know how it was going to go. I know it was a 70-30 landslide victory, but they didn't know that. And I know that they didn't know that because people tell me that they didn't know that. And so we have, because Jan Morgan was in the race, the governor had to say, I'm not going to do a grocery tax. I've always been consistent. I don't support an increase in grocery tax. That's because you actually said that you wanted to eliminate it. Obviously, you've been in office now almost 4 years, and we still have the grocery tax, but it's actually set to cycle down and decrease even more next year because of what's already in existing law. So the task force was considering raising grocery taxes on the middle class and the rich because, hey, right? We're all progressives now, and so if we're all progressives, then of course we believe in a progressive income tax scale, not just in the actual income tax, but we also believe in progressivism when it comes to purchasing goods and foods. We need to have different. Honestly, can you understand what they're saying here? The Republican Party was seriously considering a progressive scale when it comes to sales taxes. That's when it comes to sales tax. Well, you make this much money, so you can pay more sales tax than somebody who's poor, and they're going to get an earned income tax credit or be part of a welfare program. These are Republican ideas now in Asa Hutchinson's Arkansas Republican Party. These are now the Republican. And so Asa came out, though, and he torpedoed the idea because he was in a competitive primary. And now, the task force, you have the governor on record saying he doesn't support the grocery tax increase. Notice he didn't say that he wouldn't sign a grocery tax increase tax bill. So now they're trying to figure out other things. Okay, what if we tax investments? Well, you guys have already lowered the capital gains tax rate. Surely you're not going to increase capital gains taxes. Surely you're not going to increase capital gains tax. They're talking about a proposal to tax investments, passive income, and sales by churches. Passive income? Passive income? So what would that be? This is fascinating to me. It goes on. Under current law, Arkansas does not impose a state tax on interest churches earn investing money in savings accounts. So Arkansas does not impose a state tax on interest churches earn in investing money in savings accounts or on the sale or rental of church property. So there's an exemption there on churches. This tax break, Jerry Cox writes, has been on the books for more than 30 years, but now some lawmakers want to discuss doing away with it. Charities and churches contribute at least $378 billion to the United States economy each year, and possibly much more than that, according to some estimates. Many churches operate on budgets that are so tight they likely would have to shut their doors if they were taxed at the same rate as for-profit corporations. Our state needs to think twice before increasing the tax burden churches and charities carry. This idea would be something that would come out of a Clinton idea, because the Clintons essentially, well, I mean, the liberals, I mean, they're the ones that have a problem, I believe, a lot of them, especially, I mean, a lot of people, when Hillary Clinton was running for president, just so you know, there were people that said, I can't vote for her because if she wins, religious freedom will end in this country, because they'll start to divide. Well, even Obama was doing it. Religious freedom was changed to not freedom of religion, but freedom to worship. They believe that worship is just something that takes place within, four walls and a roof one day a week. They don't believe that worship is something that you do, you're supposed to do every time, or every, what's the key purpose of man to worship God and enjoy Him forever, right? So there was a movement to try to compartmentalize people of religious faith in the United States of America, right? And so I'm just telling you, eliminating tax exemptions on churches is something that I believe the liberal left has been excited and giddy about and ready to do for a very long time. But we here in Arkansas, we got to squeeze that turnip. We got to get every bit of money we can from Arkansas taxpayers, because there's just something not right. There's something driving spending in Arkansas. We're giving the government a ton of our money, and yet it's not enough for some reason. For some reason, it's not enough to them, right? So we're going to keep watching this, but listen back to this article here. So many churches are on very tight budgets. Jerry Cox writes that this isn't the first tax increase the task force has looked at this year. Obviously, I'm saying the word farce. He's writing the word force, but play along with me. A few weeks ago, the task force voted to move forward with discussions about increasing the state sales tax on groceries and ending Arkansas's annual back-to-school tax holiday. Family Council supported efforts to eliminate the grocery tax and worked very hard to help pass legislation creating the tax holiday in 2011. He goes on to say that if you're concerned about the tax reform task force's proposal to raise taxes on churches, I encourage you to contact your state representative and state senator. If you need help contacting them, you can call the Family Council office. And you see the number there, those of you watching on your screen, if you need help contacting them. So this is a very, it's a good report. I think it's a kind of a warning, trying to kind of rally the troops of people who are, big supporters of the Family Council and the work that they do, trying to preserve and protect traditional American values right here in Arkansas. And they are now watching the task force. They are now. So it's not just, people don't necessarily think of Family Council as an economic group. They're a family group, but they know that higher taxes is an oppressive thing on families and on churches. And so that is why that they are paying attention. Now, there will be the Asocrats who are going to start saying, well, if you're getting outside your scope of focus, or they'll start saying there's some conspiracy. There must be some conspiracy with these groups on the right, where you have a family group or you have an economic focus group, and there's some conspiracy going on, and that's not the case at all. Folks, there are independent organizations in Arkansas who report and make their assumptions and opinions based on what politicians do. Not what they say alone, but what they actually do. And there are some in the Marble Palace that have a very difficult time coping with alternative opinions and alternative points of view. They don't like dissent. And if there is any dissent, they try to quash it as fast as they can, like you're a king trying to stamp out the beginnings of a rebellion. All right? And that is the mentality right now. But guess what? If you are a truth seeker, Conduit News wants to be the conduit where there's a free flow of information from the Marble Palace to the people. We're taking a break. This is Conduit News Radio. We got more to get to. Back in just a moment.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Tonight at 7, I'm going to be in Conway for the Faulkner County Tea Party at the McGee Center. I'd love to see you there. If you're in the Faulkner County area, you want to make it to Conway and go to the Faulkner County Tea Party, I'm going to be there tonight at 7. I also understand Dave Ellswick will be in attendance as well, so I'm excited to see him, and I'm excited to congregate with like-minded people who understand the benefits of a limited government and the pitfalls of a big government. Again, I'll be in Conway tonight for the Faulkner County Tea Party at the McGee Center at 7. Now, yeah, I know it gets close to my bedtime there, but it'll just be a late night. I got some great sleep yesterday, by the way. I got some it was amazing. I feel so much better, rejuvenated after that whole primary process and having to, figure out this race or that race and that sort of thing. It's really, really good stuff. So we were just talking, we were listening to that parody that we do about the debate. One of the things that we haven't talked about in a while is the governing format when it comes to an issue or a problem or even a long-term goal. The establishment down at the Marble Palace, they prefer to govern with a task force. They prefer to whittle down your full legislative body and create extra special legislators, the ones who have done whatever they need to do to get on the task force, or the ones who are not all of them are necessarily water boys, but you understand, like they just are there to, what I'm getting at is the Marble Palace, as it is, it's not a place for free and open debate. It's not a freedom place. It's not a place for free and open debate. It's a place for controlled discussion. Joe and I were talking during the break, and that phrase "controlled discussion" is his phrase. I was trying to put words to it. I was saying it's not a place for free and open debate. And Joe's like, controlled discussion. It's like, that's exactly right. You can debate ideas, but only in a compartmentalized, parameters. They set the goalposts of what those are, and when they do that, they then are able to control the outcome and predict it within those parameters. And it's what everybody's comfortable with. It's called the status quo. So that is why you have this tendency. It is a knee-jerk reaction to govern with a task force, right? I mean, we have standing committees where the legislature has a little bit more input on who gets on what committee. Now, that's fast dwindling as well, because that's done for more centralized control and power from the elites in the power structure. But if you have a standing committee on revenue and tax in the Senate, and you have a standing committee on revenue and tax in the House, why do you need a task force on taxes? Committees meet all the time during the interim period in between sessions. Now, I mean, that's an honest question. Some might say, well, the Democrats loaded up the committee in the House, because that's the most powerful committee in the House, is the committee that decides the most important thing we all discuss, is how's the government going to take money from us? Now, whose fault was that? Well, that was the Speaker of the House's fault, because they didn't see it coming. They didn't understand, and a lot of people think that it worked to the benefit of Asa, Hutchinson, and the Republican establishment, because I think they benefited from having Democrats on that committee, because what it meant was that the only tax policies that would get through were Asa's proposals. So a conservative legislator didn't have a chance to get it to the full House. That's what it meant. And we know that's what it meant because, we have the results of we didn't get any votes on true conservative tax reform.
Who
know why they're making their decision. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's not rocket science. I mean, just like they couldn't go down to the local McDonald's and have a private discussion after they receive information and vote and do all those things. They can't do that on email either, and they can't do it on text messages. And so, I don't care if directors, get together and talk about, what they're going to do this weekend, but when they start discussing public business, that's when our republic gets in trouble, because decisions are made without our knowledge. Mansfield was a classic example. They called for the mayor to resign the week before, and I was reading the paper. I'm like, they had to have had a secret meeting. There was just too much uniformity in what they were doing. So the mayor had called me, so I just FOIA'd the documents. Lo and behold, there were all these text messages where they had lined up people to be there. I mean, they had the whole thing staged. They had the votes counted, and a decision had already been made. And so we had a sham public meeting.
So did he resign? Did the mayor of Mansfield resign?
Gosh, no. He's done. He's fighting on tooth and nail because he loves Mansfield. He's doing the best that he absolutely can for the citizens of Mansfield. And this was a coup. I mean, it was over political disagreements. They don't like the way he's holding folks accountable. And hey,
they're taking a cue. They're taking a cue from Peter Strzok and Lisa Page with these secret secret society stuff here, right? I mean, it kind of is. It's like a local deep state, if you will.
I mean, it really is. I mean, there's all politics are local, and we need to be keeping an eye on our local community. The sad fact of the matter is, Paul, the establishment wants a rigged system. We see it in tort reform, where they're trying to rig the system, where a jury can never make a meaningful decision again. It's immoral to place a price tag on the value of human life. We also see a rigged system with sovereign immunity, this sovereign immunity decision.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, my goodness, the Minimum Wage Act no longer applies to state workers. I have to pay minimum wage, but the court has ruled that the state doesn't have to pay minimum wage. I mean, come on. I mean, our Article 2 of our state constitution. That's where the powers. We created government. We the people created government, not.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so as we continue to set the narrative, the news narrative for the state of Arkansas this morning, I want to kind of go into a flashback because we were just talking about the family councils reporting on the task farce on taxes and how they are now looking at a proposal to repeal the income tax exemption on church passive investment. And I'm looking at summary of this proposal, number 27. I'm looking at it on my screen for consideration by the Arkansas Tax Reform and Relief Legislative Task Force. Summary of the proposal to repeal the income tax exemption on church passive investment under Arkansas Code 26-51-206B, effective for tax years beginning January 1, 2019. The fiscal analysis: repeal of the income tax exemption on church passive investment may result in an unknown per-year increase to the general revenue based on figures from fiscal year 2016. As provided by the Department of Finance and Administration. Individual and corporate income tax revenue impact on exemptions. Presentation to the Arkansas Tax Reform and Relief Legislative Task Force. And if you, I'm going down here, and it just look. Do you know why they're considering this? They're considering this. No, yeah, they need the money. Yeah. But they're looking across the landscape, and you know what they see a lot of in Arkansas? churches. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of small churches. There's a lot of big churches. There's a lot of big churches, a lot of big buildings. They must be doing well. And your own government sees that, and they say, I wonder if the tax man's been to see them in a while. It's pretty scary, isn't it? I mean, it's pretty offensive to me. So, I want you to understand why they're pursuing the ideas they're pursuing. And it's because there is a lack of conservative motivation. And the reason that we are to this point, and you could say, we could analyze the loyalty aspects or the family relatives from the executive branch to the legislative branch, like we've done many times on the program, and I'm sure we'll do again. You could analyze their individual views, loyalties, things like that. But what you really need to understand is this task force got off to a terrible start from the beginning because they hired a lifelong Democrat as a consultant. And Conduit News was talking about this for months before he was fired and dismissed. They say for not doing his job, which I think is partly true. But I also know that there were people on the task force who were uncomfortable. There were people outside being like, we hired who? Yeah, you hired a lifelong Democrat whose Twitter feed looked like something that out of a Bernie Sanders campaign commercial. That's who they hired. Here's a flashback article over at Conduit for Action. All truth seekers out there, if you have ears to hear. Headline, Death of Tax Relief, a raging liberal chosen to guide Arkansas policy. This was back in October of last year. And if you go down to this guy, Randall Bauer is who they hired, a guy by the name of Randall Bauer. Now, he's since been fired. Just who is Randall Bauer? The task force hired an out-of-state consultant, PFM Group Consulting, at the hefty price of $312,000. Now, they did not spend all of that money. They only spent, I think, half of that money because they fired him in between. At the next task force meeting, PFM made a presentation and revealed that Randall Bauer would be the project manager. It is important to know about the lead consultant whose job it is to reform the Arkansas tax code, which will impact millions of Arkansans. Now, again, we have talked about raising grocery taxes on the rich and middle class and creating a welfare program for those who are middle income. At poverty level. That got torpedoed thanks to Jan Morgan being in the race for now, but who knows? They're probably going to resurrect it anyway because they really have no shame. And number two, now we're talking about getting rid of tax exemptions on churches and their passive income and their investments. Where do ideas like this come from? From raging liberals. That's where ideas like this come from. From people who really, honestly, have never read, they don't know anything about, essentially Austrian economics. They are looking to the Keynesian Barack Obama model. Hey, do you remember when there used to be a video of a guy trolling people on the street that said Obama is a Keynesian? And, of course, that was back when everybody, we're talking about Obama being from Kenya. And it was hilarious to see people freak out because they're talking about Keynesian economics, not Kenya. That was funny. Okay, so it's important to know about the lead consultant. This is a flashback article. Let's take a look at this Randall Bauer guy. What did we find out from him? Look at his social media posts here. These were a few screenshots. This was back when the NFL kneeling was on the news every single day. By the way, the NFL kneeling is back in the news today because the NFL has given Donald Trump yet another victory because the NFL has essentially said, you know what? We need to respect our country, and we don't need to have a policy that allows our players to disrespect our country and our flag and our nation without consequences. So now there will be consequences for the NFL players if they take a knee on the field during the national anthem. Now, there are some people that say it doesn't go far enough because you can just stay in the locker room. I would predict that there will still be fans that will ding the NFL's ratings when they see players that are just going to stay in the locker room. I mean, that's still going to look bad, but they're leaving it up to each NFL team to set their policy on what their penalties will be. If a player kneels, the league will fine the team, and it's the team's responsibility to set the individual policy of what their fine will be. So Randy Bauer, he said during this whole NFL kneeling thing, Randy Bauer said, "It is the difference between the light and the dark. Only Obama is light, and Trump is dark." Then he loved to retweet the anti-Second Amendment group. Michael Bloomberg supports. Let's see, keep going down. He was all for the Medicaid expansion and Obamacare. There's a tweet that showed he was all for that. Again, this guy is was a big liberal, and he started the task force down the path. This is the biggest one here at the very end. Tax cuts are not the same as tax reform. Repeat. So we know where he comes from on taxes, where his policy is on taxes. So I guess he believes tax increases are reform. Tax shifting is reform. Playing a shell game is reform. He also has a history of donating to Democrats. This is just a flashback article. So, you can call anything. You can change anything and call it a reform, Joe. Yeah. I mean, that's what their whole thing is. It's a mechanism or a convention between the voters and them to communicate something. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Joe's pointing out to me that I have been saying for a while that the biggest problem and divide within the Republican Party, notice I don't say conservative movement, but they would call themselves conservatives. They use our own words, but this comes back to what I have been saying. The divide is because we can't agree on the definitions of words and phrases and what they mean. And this is case in point, is tax cuts are not the same as tax reform. They hired this guy. We are a Republican state, supposedly, with massive Republican majorities. And if you want to know why they are thinking about removing the tax exemption on churches, you need look no further than conduitforaction.org back in October when we were telling you this thing. When we were telling you even before that, this thing, we have serious doubts. But now look at it. I mean, now look at what they're doing. And the fact that Jan Morgan got ACID to deny that he was going to, let's say, I don't support a grocery tax increase. Oh, boy. The fact that happened, my goodness. Now they don't have anywhere to get money from us. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, because I kind of feel like, I mean, the way it was described to me, some of these task force meetings are at this point, now that the grocery tax has been torpedoed, the increase that they were going to do, the welfare program they were going to set up, it's been described to me as headless chickens running around. It's kind of the way it feels. Nobody really knows what to do now, and that's why they're looking at statewide property tax. That's why now they're looking at raising taxes on churches. Folks, they want their money one way or the other, because they're definitely not going to admit that Arkansas has a spending problem or a key driver of spending that all of them support. They're going to do everything they can to look, look over here. I mean, or to construct some Wizard of Oz apparatus where they're behind the curtain and they're operating some mechanism, a machine to tell you, They want you to think that they are something that they're not. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Moving on from this, I want to take a. This is interesting. So we have this concept of dark money, right? We have a concept of dark money, and you're hearing more about it because of the Supreme Court race. And now you have David Sterling and Justice Courtney Goodson heading to a runoff. Justice Courtney Goodson is already in the seat. She's trying to maintain. She's the incumbent. And you have David Sterling trying to challenge. Well, it's very clear that the liberals do not like David Sterling. That's what's abundantly clear to me. Only because of Max Brantley, the Arkansas Times, and they don't like. I mean, they're calling him. I don't know. Was it Brummett that was calling him a? I think it was even Brummett that was calling him this, right-wing attorney or whatever. Oh, by the way, did you see John Brummett on Talk Business and Politics talking about the state of Arkansas politics and how Asa had a very good night? Really talking about how the party is now Asa's and that party is a moderate, just right of center party. And I just thought to myself, I appreciate your honesty, John, because what John Brummett was doing there is sizing up his enemy. And the bottom line is John Brummett is more threatened by actual conservatism than he is this progressive moderate thing where the policies that are being implemented are basically, on the fiscal side of things, right where he thinks they ought to be. And I look forward to the day here in Arkansas where we will have a Republican governor that is criticized daily on everything he does by John Brummett. I look forward to the day where John Brummett doesn't protect and praise a Republican governor. I look forward to the day that is a reality here in this state. So, the Arkansas Times, Max Brantley, he has a headline, and they're now trying to attack David Sterling on his ethics. And they're upset because they know that this is just more evidence that we are a conservative state, mind you. Brantley talks about the dark money. He calls David Sterling a Republican darling and trying to oust Courtney Goodson. And then talks about the Judicial Crisis Network and the Republican State Leadership Committee. Yeah, dark money darling. Wow, that's actually fun to say. Dark money darling. So what happens here is they're upset with the Judicial Crisis Network because they're an outside group, but they're really just upset with Citizens United. I mean, they're really just upset that people have the freedom to spend their money and do what they want to with it. So, $2 million, let's say they've already devoted almost $2 million to beating Courtney Goodson. Can we expect better behavior from Sterling himself? He uttered no disapproving words about dark and partisan and misleading words in support of his race for a nonpartisan office. That's unlikely to change. All right, real quick. I know it's a nonpartisan office, but it's not a nonpartisan office. Can we admit that? I'm so sick of this. Your judges are not nonpartisan positions. Let me repeat. They are not nonpartisan positions. There are two ways to interpret the law these days. Either the Constitution is a living document, and there are plenty of judges that believe that it is, or it's not a living document, and you want to interpret the law based on the words and the meanings and the understanding of those words. And yes, you have to use 18th century dictionaries to do it sometimes, but those are the two different philosophies, and those are two different political philosophies, because one political goal is to maintain a limited government that protects the rights of its citizens from too much government. The other is to allow the government to grow and provide more and more responsibilities, take more and more responsibilities on itself that was never prescribed in the original documents or the original intent of the law. Those are two competing political philosophies. So you can say all you want that the judicial races are nonpartisan because they can't declare, and that's what that means, they can't declare a party. But let's not pretend that it's not political, because it's almost more political than declaring a party. So, Max Brantley goes on. We can expect better behavior from Sterling. He turned no. Okay. So here we go. Evidence supplied by an election watcher. I don't know who this election watcher is, but Max Brantley says this, that or reports this. Using his Facebook posting power, David Sterling is actively directing people to content he keeps alive from his AG race and portions of his website to declare his past positions. He urges people to look up my stance on some things. He is in violation of the Judicial Ethics Rule 4.1, publicly identifying himself as being affiliated with a political organization. He is making a statement that would reasonably be expected to affect some outcome or impart the fairness of a matter pending. Is making promise or commitments that are inconsistent with the impartial performance of the adjudicative duties. Okay? So, then they cite a Facebook post. I'm going to tell you why this is all bogus here in just a minute. Then they cite a Facebook post where somebody is asking David Sterling, a guy named James, what's your stance on the Second Amendment? And by that, I'm referring to cities and states that have been putting restrictions on and banning certain firearms. And David Sterling says, hi, James. I appreciate your interest in my race and your questions about my stance on the Second Amendment, but I am not allowed to disclose my opinions on issues so that I can maintain impartiality once elected. So I can't disclose this because I'm running a, quote, nonpartisan judicial campaign. But then he says, please feel free to visit my website to learn more about me, and you can look up my stance on some things when I ran for Attorney General back in 2014. Now, that is why they're mad. They're mad because they know we're a conservative state, number one, and they know this will get David Sterling more votes because he ran a partisan race in 2014 and identified himself as a Republican in 2014 and ran for Attorney General and had a stance on the Second Amendment that was, and people can go and read that if they want. And this is driving the liberals crazy because guess what? They know this state doesn't like liberals. Now, you know why this is so disingenuous? Because Courtney Goodson, when she lost her race to Dan Kemp, was running ads about how she was supported by the NRA. Do you remember that? Oh, no. We don't want to, that's not a violation. Is there any, are we going to now say, are liberals now going to say that the NRA is not a political organization? Is that what we're going to say? It's the most politicized organization. It's in the news every day. Apparently, if you're affiliated with the NRA, the left thinks you're a terrorist. But MS-13 is totally fine, by the way. They have the spark of life in them. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And that's why this whole thing is just disingenuous, in my opinion. But we'll see what happens. The dark money attacks will continue, or the attacks on dark money will continue, because they like to define what dark money is. They don't really care about dark money in other places. It's only dark money if it's going against what you want. Back in a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
That's great.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so Joe, we only have like a minute left in this hour, but you made a great point, and you have an announcement, a congratulatory announcement to make to who?
Yes, this is a congratulatory announcement to MS-13. You have now made it. You are now a part of the Victims Club. The Political Victims Club.
That is now the American dream. That's the new American dream. Can you become a victimized group that will be used to maintain or acquire political power by elites? I like it. They get their victim card. They're now victims.
You can pick it up at the next 1835 card.
All right, we got to take a break, folks. We got one more hour coming your way next. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk 10 Commandments and hospital math next hour. I know that may not sound very fun, but, well, I mean, I'm going to have a great time, so stick with us.
Talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
The other way around.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the sovereign immunity decision from 2 weeks ago. There's that part in the Constitution that says the state of Arkansas shall never be made a defendant in any of her courts. It reversed a 90s ruling saying that, the state can be sued if the legislature passes something saying it can be sued. So what about the ruling? I mean, I know substantively we've lost our rights. We had privileges. Now we don't have apparently it was a privilege to sue the people of Arkansas or sue the state of Arkansas. So what do you think about the ruling on the constitutional grounds, and where do we go from here?
Well, where do we go from here? Possibly there's really only two routes. One would be a constitutional amendment, and we know how fond the government seems to be. They want to amend away our rights all the time. That's what they're doing. It's unfortunate, but I guess I'm philosophically opposed to the principle that the king can do no wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That decision is inconsistent with Article 2, and as most of the viewers know, and I encourage you to look up our Constitution, particularly Article 2. That's our Bill of Rights, and that decision is inconsistent with our what we call our Declaration of Rights. And to me, that's the most important part of our Constitution. It's inconsistent with, as I said, Section 1. We, the people, establish the government, and the people are the sovereign, and the government is the servant. You look at Article 2, Section 1. Article 2, Section 2. The government was created to protect the rights of the people, not to deny them. You look at Article 2, Section 7, where it says the right to trial by jury shall remain inviolate. So all of these, the Arkansas Constitution has to be considered as a whole, Paul,
mm-hmm.
and that's what we're looking at in this tort reform fight, where they want to take away our rights and shove these caps down our throat, and they're not looking at the entire Constitution. I mean, they don't even consider Article 2, Section 13, nor did this court, when it says that we should obtain justice freely, without purchase, completely, and without denial. I mean,
yeah, promptly, without delay. Well, I mean, and the reason, one of the big reasons I don't support what we're going to be voting on this November on the tort reform is because, it's going to give the legislature the authority to set rules of evidence for the judicial branch. That seems like a violation of the separation of powers. Let me ask you this. We're talking with Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon. You can feel free to go back to the tort reform thing, but you're so familiar with FOIA, Freedom of Information. How do we get the state? Obviously, it looks like we can still get the cities and local governments to comply with freedom of information. But if you can't sue the state of Arkansas, how do we get the state of Arkansas to comply with freedom of information?
Well, here's what my suggestion will be, and I suspect that after the next election, I suspect that and really feel that I'm going to be asking for a constitutional amendment, or I'm going to ask the legislature to change the law in 2019. And I think that FOIA should apply not only to local folks, but it should also apply to state representatives and state senators.
I agree.
They're doing a ton of business. And that, while we have the strongest FOIA law, that Republicans, unfortunately, down at Little Rock last session, they tried to gut FOIA, completely gut it. It could have gone from the strongest. Our sunshine laws would have gone to the strongest to the weakest overnight. FOIA is the only way we hold government accountable. And I think there needs to be either legislators. I doubt they'll vote to where they have to do their business in public, but so we may have to go to the people and ask the people to pass a constitutional amendment to make FOIA, our sunshine laws, apply to state representatives where they can't go into back rooms and cut deals, which obviously they're doing. They can do that legally now, but it's not right. Back to tort reform, Paul, I agree with you. What they're trying to, what's happening down at Little Rock, they're trying to rig the system.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
That's funny. Welcome to the second hour. Last hour, we're talking about the tax farce's proposal to tax churches. And we do want to make clear, was that on our Facebook page? No, I just said that. Oh, okay. Joe's saying it. We're not talking about churches' chicken. They're not talking about taxing churches' chicken. They're talking about taxing churches, like ending your exemptions on passive income. That was in the first hour. Go and get it over at conduitnews.com. The podcast is it already out? The podcast is up for hour one, and you could just finish listening to the rest of this hour live and then go back later. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Later on in the day, I'm going to be making my way to Conway. I'm going to go to the Faulkner County Tea Party tonight at 7. I'll be speaking alongside talk radio host Mr. Dave Ellswick of the Dave Ellswick Show. Excited about that. It's in Conway, Arkansas at the McGee Center at 7 o'clock. And if you'd like to meet me, I'd love to meet you. And we'll talk about, I guess we'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. You can ask me questions, and I'll give you my thoughts on things. It's like, I don't know, it's like a radio show unplugged, I guess. So feel free, and I'll remind you guys about that one more time before we end the program this morning. Good morning to you. Thanks for starting the beginning of your day with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. So, here's my question this morning. Is having no particular religious affiliation a world view? And or is it not? Is it not a worldview to have no religion, to have no belief in a higher power? Let's say. Let's just talk about atheism for a second. So if you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, do you believe that is a world view? Now, if your answer is no, my argument would be that it is. Okay? It is a world view. Okay. So the next question is, if being an atheist is a world view, can that world view discriminate against or impede people with a different worldview? Can your atheism discriminate against people who are not atheists? This is a question. I don't pretend that it's an easy one, but it's an honest question and an honest debate that we need to have here. Because right now in this country, the arguments from organizations like the Freedom From Religion or organizations like the ACLU that are suing the state of Arkansas now because there is a monument on the Capitol grounds that has the 10 Commandments from God on the building or on the grounds. Their argument is that that particular worldview is somehow discriminating against those who don't have that worldview. And my question is, can the opposite happen? And their argument can only work if the opposite cannot happen. Their argument only works if atheism is not a worldview capable of punishing others that don't have that worldview. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a huge hypocrisy. And it shows a huge favoritism towards people in our society today, where because there are more people who believe in a higher power, i.e. the majority, then they must be discriminatory. Because there's more of them, then it must be discriminatory on the minority. And that is not necessarily the case, because there are no actual rights being taken away, religiously speaking, from more people in this country believing in God than those who don't. Their argument upon this critical examination falls to pieces, my friends. It falls to absolute pieces. The fact of the matter is, those 10 Commandments, from a secular standpoint, is a historical monument. A historical monument that we base our laws on to this very day. If you steal, guess what? You end up in a courtroom, in a secular courtroom, in a non-religious courtroom. Right? If you commit adultery, you're likely going to end up in a divorce hearing in a secular courtroom. Right? What else? I mean, you can go down the list. If you murder someone, you're going to end up in a secular, non-religious courtroom. At the very least, you can make that argument all day long. But I don't want to just rely on that argument. I want to actually talk about the concept of your First Amendment right to religious freedom. And the concept is very clear. Congress shall pass no law establishing religion. And the very goal here is to prevent the government from interfering in your personal, individual right to do and say and worship whatever you want to worship. They operate under the situation that that monument that is religious in nature, that monument somehow is taking away the right of an atheist to believe what they want, or the right of someone who is not a Christian to believe what they want. And that is simply not true. They are arguing that somehow the First Amendment says, well, governments can't be seen to favor a religion. Well, that is a subjective opinion. There are some people that could look at that statue and say that this is not them favoring a religion. How is it them favoring a religion? There's some that would say it's favoritism. There are others that would say, no, I mean, it's a historical monument. You know, we base our laws on that, and they're at the Supreme Court. You know, they're still up at the Supreme Court, by the way, in the building there, because these laws are the basis of the beginning of Western civilization. You combine those laws with what Jesus taught, which is the Golden Rule, and you get essentially a very powerful political tool of freedom. You know, in trying to pass our laws with the concept of well, how would I want to be treated? And that's what we've done here. I mean, this is the reality. People want to whitewash it. They want to ignore it, just like they want to tear down Confederate statues because they're trying to, repair themselves. They want to perfect themselves. They want to worship themselves, and you're perfectly free to do that in this country. And those 10 Commandments do not inhibit that at all. Now, maybe you just want a totalitarian approval. Maybe you want to be told that you're right. Maybe you want the government to confirm your worldview. Well, that's not what the government's in the business of doing. It's not the government's responsibility, if you're an atheist, to make you feel good about your atheism. That's not a responsibility at all of the government. Just like it's not the responsibility of the government to affirm your gender identity and make you feel good about that. You're perfectly free to be who you want to be. You're perfectly free to think how you want to think. No. What you want is totalitarian. You don't just want tolerance. You want agreement. You want us to heartily approve of your worldview. And right now in this country, among liberal circles, and when I say liberal circles, I basically mean the court system, because Trump is doing some good things with justices, but they're getting slow walked, in the confirmation process. But right now, somehow, the people of this country have been blinded to think that atheism is not a worldview that is thrust upon Christians or Jews. That belief in the saying, I don't believe in a higher power. The people who say that can have no negative consequences on people who do say that. And I'm saying, if you're arguing that the 10 Commandments is oppressive, then why can't we argue that your atheism is oppressive? And upon that point, their argument falls to pieces. Now, this lawsuit, we've got one from the ACLU, and we've also got one from the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And, of course, they want to put a statue. These people obviously want to put a statue of Baphomet, the half-man, half-woman, half-goat satanic statue, because they think that's an equivalent. Well, guess what? It could be the equivalent, but you need to find a senator or a state representative to file a bill putting a satanic statue of Baphomet on the Capitol grounds. You got to find that one guy first. I'm sure you'll find him somewhere in Arkansas, right? And then he's going to have to convince his colleagues to support it. They might even co-sign. And then they've got to go through the committee process, and it's got to pass one chamber, and then go through another committee process, going to pass another chamber, got to survive a governor's veto. And then if he vetoes it, they may get to override it with a simple majority. But you can do all of that because that's how this 10 Commandments monument was put up. It went through that process. It went through the process of the consent of the governed. You can do all of that. And then, if we refuse to put it up, then you have a case. Then you actually have a discrimination case. Then you actually have your favoritism argument. But guess what? You can't do that, can you? You can't pass it into law. You can't find somebody to do that because, your view, your satanic view, or your godless view, I'm not equating those two, by the way, that's a different theological discussion, so I'll actually I'll just put a little asterisk there. But that hasn't happened. I mean, you're not going to be able to find someone to run that bill, and so you don't have a case. So in the meantime, your only argument is to say that you're offended. That's really all your argument is that you look at those 10 Commandments and you're offended. Now, never mind the fact that Scripture teaches that happens to people, man. I mean, when they hear the truth or they hear something that, is basically telling them that maybe they're living their life the wrong way, it can grate on it. And nobody likes to be told that they're inadequate, right? And so a lot of times, you react and you turn and you lash out at the truth. Okay, all right. Well,
You don't think it's the truth? Okay, I got that. Well, where in the Constitution does it say that you have a right? You got a lot of rights. You got a lot of them. But do you have the right to not be offended? And that's really what this is. You're just offended, right? You're offended that there's a competing view. That there are people out there who voted for people and that they have the Ten Commandments expressed on their Capitol grounds. The schools have done a terrible, terrible, terrible thing by not teaching people what the First Amendment actually says. And what the intent was in the 18th century was to give you the freedom. A freedom of religion and in government interference doesn't mean that there's a lack of God expressed in our public life. I mean, that's why, and to suggest that would mean that no politician is, and they've tried to suggest that, by the way, that if you, in your official capacity as a politician, as an individual, express your faith in God or in Christ, that now you're in violation of the First Amendment because you're a government official and you're talking about a higher power. And that is the logical, if they are right, that obviously is the logical conclusion, that you have no freedom, that you have absolutely no freedom to express your belief in a higher power if you're in public office. You have none of it. You ever quote Scripture, you're now in violation. You ever quote Scripture in a political speech or at the Marble Palace or something, you're now at a press conference, you're now in violation. According to them, you're now in violation, and you're violating others' religious liberty. That is insane. It's preposterous. And, obviously our founding fathers, most of them were theologians themselves. So we have, and again, this goes back to my previous segment about the competing judicial philosophies. You either believe the document is what it says, or you believe it's a living document that can change to the times because man is evolving and learning how to perfect themselves and learning to put off their basic tendencies to want to dominate other people with power and violence and scheming and plots. No, I am glad the Ten Commandments are up at the Marble Palace. I really am. I hope as legislators walk by them, I hope it can be used as a reminder of a higher power and God's perfect standard and how God demands perfection. Of course, no one is perfect except for God himself. And then, that's just a perfect opportunity to talk about the gospel and how it's through Christ's righteousness that the wrath of God, Christ is our cleft, rock of ages, cleft for me. It's actually part of the, speaking of Ten Commandments, it's if you know anything about what happened when God passed over Moses, he had to hide in the cleft of the rock because he couldn't experience the full presence of God because of his sinfulness. So we are, and so that kind of makes it full circle, doesn't it? You have the what is it? That it's the New Testament and the Old Testament concealed, the Old Testament in the New Testament revealed. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in a moment.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language, the purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields two beneficial outcomes. First, the government-growing politicians stay in office, and second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in this situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist health care program. So the remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so check this out. We are calling on all of you Conduit News subscribers and listeners to go to your social media platform of choice. I don't care, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Probably most of it will be on Facebook. And I just want you to do a status update. And I just want you to tell all of your friends that you listen to the Conduit News Radio. Tell them about us. You know, you just say, make up whatever you want. Well, I mean, you know, don't make it up. But you know what I'm saying? Craft whatever message you want to craft. Just just give us a shout out just today. We don't ask you to do much, but we're asking you to just go to your Facebook page or your Twitter and just send out and tag at Conduit News in it, and just let us know who you are. Let us know you're listening, and send it out to all your friends. Okay, so that we can start to duplicate and build and grow this Liberty machine to even more people. Because I will tell you this: our show yesterday was huge. No, it was. I mean, and our numbers have just continued to grow. The more we do this, every single month. I mean, ever since January, things have just been in a very good trajectory. But we've got to get the information clearly out to even more people. Just know that if you are a truth seeker, right? If you're wanting the truth, there's some people that don't want to hear it. There's some people that I don't even know if they can hear it. But if you want it, Conduit News will be a conduit of free-flowing information, speaking truth to power, getting it out to the masses. Go to your social media platform and give us a shout-out. Back in just a moment.
And they're doing that with giving rule-making authority to legislators. Now, we know that it's not being given to the teachers and the farmers and the business folks down at Little Rock who are legislators because it's such a political environment. The rig system will give all the power to lobbyists, and there will be no rights to the people. The right to trial by jury, you will never have access to the courtroom again. You know, not only do they want to rig that system in terms of, as you've said, the balance of powers, they want to rig the system. They want to say that if a person is a quadriplegic, if your wife is a quadriplegic or wrongfully killed out on the highways, they want to say that her life is worth $500,000. I mean, or the quadriplegia for the rest of a person's life is worth $500,000 without letting local people called citizen jurors make that call. That's immoral, and as we both know, Paul, it's unconstitutional. In 1874, the same Constitution that we're talking about on this sovereign immunity issue, our founding fathers put a provision that said the legislature cannot cap damages. And the reason they did that is because the railroads, today it's nursing homes, but the railroads of the day were teaming up with legislators and taking away the rights of the people. Our founding fathers had enough foresight to include that in our Constitution. And they, again, just like they want to take away FOIA overnight, they want to take away the right to trial by jury and the right to life. By placing a price tag on the value of human life. This price tag amendment is wrong, Paul. It's just a price tag amendment.
I tell you, I really appreciate your comparison to, the railroad companies to now nursing homes. I think that, I want to explore that some more. I want to get into the history of that because I think we can really learn, behind the motivations and maybe start drawing specific lines of comparison of what they were doing versus, we saw here in the last couple of years, you have a judge that says, hey, I accepted a bribe of $10,000 to lower a judgment against a nursing home owner. And so, we see where the special interests are, and it looks like it doesn't lie with. It looks like this amendment, this tort reform amendment, was written specifically for the nursing home industry.
Well, it was the nursing homes have pushed tort reform. They've pushed a price tag on the value of human life, session after session, in 2013 and 2015, when they couldn't.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. What's going on? Yep. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. We came in there bumperless. That's just my problem. That's actually my fault, Joe. All right, so 870-275-9799, and I want to talk a little bit about hospitals. I want to talk about the hospital lobby. I want to discuss whether or not you can trust their information. Even this morning, I saw where there are still people that peddle the talking point that if it wasn't for Asa Hutchinson standing up for Arkansas Works, Medicaid expansion, Obamacare, that hospitals would close and uncompensated care would go through the roof. Now, this ignores a lot of things. Specifically, it ignores that under Obamacare, the DSH payments to hospitals were supposed to go away. And because they were going to go away, they said our uncompensated care is going to go through the roof. The reality is, fast forward to 2018, those payments have never gone away. Plus, they get taxpayer-funded revenue streams to their to the insurance companies, but eventually, to the hospitals. And so, why am I talking about this now? Well, the reason I'm talking about this now and bringing up some old stuff is because in one particular House race where Dan Sullivan was running against healthcare-backed and financed Dr. Cole Peck, and Dan Sullivan was victorious in that race,
this was a hospital play to try to get some of their power back that they lost, some of their influence back. They wanted to have somebody from Northeast Arkansas. We have two big hospitals in this area. We have Northeast Arkansas Baptist, which is like a brand new facility that was being constructed back, by the way. It was like a $400 million hospital that was being constructed back when they were saying hospitals were going to close if we didn't do this or that. Then you have St. Bernard's that's announced a huge expansion, multi-million dollar expansion from their downtown Jonesboro location. Again, they've got to have this money though, and so we're asked essentially to ignore this obvious. Obviously, you guys are not in danger of losing money. So I started to go back and do a little research, and I started to research some old articles. And I found some of them where you had the Arkansas Hospital Association testifying before committees. This was back in 2014 and such. And as I'm reading some of these articles, I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, they were talking about the data. They would always talk about the data, and they would never release their data. They would just testify to their data. And essentially their data was, listen, we've got to have this big government program in order to make hospitals financially viable. But they would never share the data, and it was really frustrating. And I actually, and what I'm going to say here is going to be controversial. Well, let me back it off. Let me just say, I believe that giving false testimony to a committee should be a state crime. I don't care who you are. If you knowingly go to the end of that table and you provide false testimony, I believe it should be a crime. I think most of us would agree it should be a crime as well, because you vote based on what they tell you. And so I think there should be, I don't know if you put them under oath, I don't know what, but I think perjury or something should be a real thing when it comes to, lobbyists going down at the end of the table, because most of the time these lobbyists deceive legislators. You don't find out maybe till a month later, 2 months. Sometimes you find out the next day or a week later, but the bill's already been passed, right? So here at Conduit News, we have a glossary of terms. And these terms that we have are our own, and we have them in an effort to educate people with the truth who want to actually hear the truth. And one of those phrases that we use is called hospital math. So the next time you hear some asocrat out there talking about how they're saving hospitals, you need to know that these not-for-profit hospitals specifically are actually engaging in a scam. They report phony numbers to you in order to secure government relationships and taxpayer money. Let me say that again. The hospitals report to the government phony numbers in order to secure more money for themselves in a system that is totally backwards. I would like to tell you the story of the $100 aspirin to prove my point. Do you want proof, guys? You guys want proof? You see, we don't tell lies here at Conduit News. We tell you the truth, and we back it up with facts. There's a doctor over in the great state of Oklahoma. Do what now? Oh, yeah. Joe here busting a musical song like he's Curly from, not Curly, what is that? Is it Curly? Yeah, it is Curly. Like you're Curly from Oklahoma. Okay. Dr. Keith Smith is the co-founder of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. They're doing things nobody else is really doing. Very few people are doing across the country. They are revolutionizing medicine by using a free market. That's right. If you go to the Surgery Center of Oklahoma website, you can actually request pricing of your surgery. They actually give you what the true free market, or as much as they can, get the free market price of what your surgery is. So they're doing amazing things. A couple of years ago, Dr. Keith Smith posted a series of YouTube videos exposing the fraud in the hospital math. And it's the story of the $100 aspirin. Joe, go ahead and put this video up for our listeners or our viewers over at facebook.com/Conduit News. Those of you listening across great radio stations across Arkansas, this is Dr. Keith Smith exposing phony hospital math. Pay attention.
Hello again, Dr. Keith Smith here, Surgery Center of Oklahoma. I thought I would quickly go over something that I've talked about for a long time now and have written about, It's the $100 aspirin. Why do big hospitals charge $100 for an aspirin? And they do this knowing they're only going to collect probably $5 for the aspirin. But they only paid a penny for the aspirin. What is all this about? Why do these charges, why are they so much more than what the hospitals know ultimately that they will collect from the insurers? The simple answer is that charging $100 and collecting $5 allows the hospital, particularly if they're a not-for-profit or so-called not-for-profit hospital, allows them to claim that they actually lost $95 or that they provided $95 of care for which they were not compensated. This is called uncompensated care. I call it the uncompensated care scam because having paid a nickel or less for the aspirin and actually being paid $5 and writing off $95 as if they lost that just simply allows them to maintain the accounting fiction of their not-for-profit status. Hospitals many times will claim that they provide millions or tens of millions of dollars of uncompensated care, and that allows them to basically maintain the fiction of this not-for-profit status. The other thing they do is they use this uncompensated care number to justify the kickback that they then later receive in the form of disproportionate share hospital or DSH payments from the federal government. So if you think about it, the extent to which the hospitals actually claim that they lost money, they actually make more money. To the extent that they exaggerate their losses, they actually generate more of a kickback from the federal government in terms of these padded dish payments. It's like I refer to it as a reverse Enron, where Enron overstated their earnings. The hospitals are inclined and induced and incentivized through this arrangement to overstate their losses. That's the brief story of the $100 aspirin. And in the next blog, I will get into why the insurance companies, even though they know that the hospital paid 1 penny for the aspirin, are happy to pay $5 when facilities like mine give the aspirin away.
All right.
Thank you for watching.
That, again, is from the Oklahoma Surgery Center of Oklahoma. That's Dr. Keith Smith exposing the fraud. I mean, it is. And so that is how they calculate your uncompensated care. They say an aspirin costs $100. They collect $5 for something that cost them a nickel, and they say they lost $95. Folks, now, I think most of us were raised to believe that is wrong. That would be a wrong thing to do, right? But you hear what they say. They want to maintain their non-profit status. It seems to me there's a lot of profit in non-profits. The perception versus reality, right? Call yourself a non-profit, you can get away with more and do whatever you want. You know, you're a non-profit. Oh, you're a non-profit. You don't believe in making money. You just believe in helping people. Yeah, it's what every sensitive. It's what some of these. I think it's kind of fading out now, but some of these guys, they try to act all super sensitive, trying to in college, you get more dates that way. Yeah, and sit down under the tree in the quad, playing your guitar, singing about how it's your dream to open up a nonprofit and the evils of capitalism. I'm sure that goes real far with the ladies these days, but it's not how things work in the real world, buddy. Make sure that when you're playing the guitar, don't make eye contact with anybody. You want to stare off into space lazily. It's more attractive that way. The women seem to... The number is 870-275-9799. Now let's let Dr. Keith Smith tell us about the insurance side of things and what a scam this is. And again, this is the state of Arkansas, and these people go down and they testify to our legislators, and they are telling them phony information. Listen.
Hello again, Dr. Keith Smith here, Surgery Center of Oklahoma. This will be part 2 of the $100 aspirin story, the insurance side. I'll start with one of my favorite jokes. And my wife's a CPA, my middle son's an engineer. And And I grew up with friends who are now mathematicians. So imagine a mathematician, engineer, and CPA in a room interviewing for a job. And the interviewer says, what's 2 plus 2? And the mathematician thinks and says, well, it depends on your definition of 2. And the engineer says 4. And the CPA says, well, what would you like for it to be? That is really the way that the hospitals and the insurance company accounting works. There's a basically make things look like they want them to look. In the last video blog, we talked about the $100 aspirin and why the hospitals need all of that red ink to maintain and justify their not-for-profit fiction. The insurance companies have another side. They're actually happy to pay giant prices. This is so counterintuitive, and this is hard, but we've put it under the heading repricing. Repricing claims is a source of giant revenue for the insurance companies, and here's how that works. Basically, the higher the hospital charge is, the more the insurance company makes. You would say, wait a minute, insurance company collects premiums, they pay claims, they keep the difference, that's their profit. And not exactly, there's more to it. It's much more complicated. Most of these health insurance claims in the United States by private insurance are actually paid through employer groups. And an employer group will have an employee that has surgery and they have a $100,000 bill, and the insurance company will reduce the bill to, say, $20,000. The hospital has their $80,000 fictitious red ink that they love and need so badly. But the insurance company has a contract with this employer. Insurance would, PPO would say, well, we've saved you, employer, $80,000. So we're now here to collect our percent of savings, our 28% or whatever the repricing fee is. What happens then is the employer, thinking they've saved $80,000, then per the terms of the contract, pays the insurance company a percentage of that savings. If you think through that, you realize insurance companies are actually inclined, perversely inclined, to seek out the most gigantic bills that they can find. It would actually be in their interest to ask the hospital administrator to mark this bill up to double, make it a $200,000 bill, because then they're repricing a much, much larger amount. This is simply advanced knowledge, insider ticket scalping is basically how it works. So that is the explanation that we sought for so long, wondering why would the insurance companies, the PPOs, want really nothing to do with Surgery Center of Oklahoma. Our quality is unsurpassed. Our pricing is lower than anywhere in this region, if not in the entire country. Why would they not want anything to do with us? And that's the answer. It's basically PPO repricing. That is very counterintuitive, and I thought it would be good to pass this along to those of you in connection with the $100 aspirin, because those two stories and those two scams really work hand in hand.
It's like
thanks again for watching,
folks. I mean, this is like equivalent of like mob level activity. I mean, if you think about running these little confidence schemes and scams, but you've just done it on such a massive level that now the money is so great and so massive. And I mean, if you're a doctor, if you're a doctor and you're listening to this, oh my goodness, do you feel oppressed? Do you feel oppressed? Do we need more freedom? Do we need more choice in our health care? Do we need to stop this monopoly that's going on with these insurance companies? And yet Arkansas's solution, again, well, we got to save our hospitals. The hospitals are lying to you, man. They're giving you numbers that are phony. So your argument there is debunked. Sorry. I know they may be your friends. I know they may can't contribute to your campaigns, but they're giving you phony information. So we got to have more freedom, more choice. We got to break this stuff up. And that is why, to bring this full circle, I'm really glad that the hospital interests that were backing Dan Sullivan's opponent lost. And they outspent Dan 2 to 3 to 1. 2 or 3 to 1 is what I mean. So, yeah, there you go. That's the truth. That's the truth of the systems that we're supporting. And right now, in Arkansas, you can't really tell where the government ends and these insurance companies and hospitals and healthcare begin. It's getting blurrier and blurrier, and that is frightening. It should be absolutely frightening, because Right now you have a system where everybody is incentivized to cover everyone else's back when things start to break apart, or when there's a crack in the dam, when there is a piece of information that exposes this. Now, that you just had the whole kit and caboodle right there, exposing it all. Here's a guy in the healthcare industry. He knows the scam of the insurance companies. He knows this, and and with us, this is a scam that's being done on our taxpayer dollars with insurance companies and hospitals. Hospitals are essentially considered by uninformed people to be above reproach because they provide a needed service of our health care. There's nothing more personal than needing the medical service. We got that, right? But just like anything, man will screw it up. And with money and the pursuit of it, that's what's happened. And they've gotten away, especially in their nonprofit status and some of their religious claims. They have gotten away from their key mission. And they somehow believe that it's okay to do accounting and present phony numbers to politicians and government officials in an effort to secure the future status quo and more profits for their nonprofits and for their insurance companies. I think most of us were raised to believe that kind of behavior is wrong. Wouldn't you say? That kind of behavior is wrong. Anyway, we have to take a break, folks. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. This is ASA News, The Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. I'm Bob Baloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, the Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? Revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. I'm sorry, Bob, the new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? Revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government,
The government better not tax our patience.
the more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patients will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
People start talking about nonprofits. They're talking about nonprofits. Speaking of nonprofits, on the Facebook page, on the Facebook feed, people say not all nonprofits are bad. That's true. Yeah, not all. Some of them are really good. They were really, really good to the governor's chief of staff, Michael Lamoureux. Yeah, $120,000 in his pocket out of the $140 they raised that year. It's real nice, Clark. Real nice. My goodness. Hey, we appreciate the feedback. We're getting really good feedback from you guys over the Ten Commandments atheistic worldview segment we did at the beginning of the hour. So I really appreciate you guys for giving us those kind words. And, hey, I want to encourage you. Or, no, actually, I want to ask you a favor. Will you go to your social media platform of choice and update your status and mention Conduit News and that you listen to us so that all your friends can be made aware of this media outlet and what we're doing? We've seen our numbers grow and increase. We want to see them grow and increase even more. So I'd like for you to go to your social media page and just make a standalone post and give us a shout-out. Would you do that for us at some point today? We would really appreciate it because we are just speaking truth for those that want to hear it. And that last segment was an example. The first segment was an example. This whole program is an example of it. Hey, folks, tonight I'm going to be in Conway, and I'd love to meet you. If you want to come to Conway, if you're in the Faulkner County area or wherever, I'm going to be at the Faulkner County Tea Party with radio talk show host Dave Ellswick. He'll be there as well. It starts at 7 o'clock. Which is really close to my bedtime, but I'm doing this because I want to meet you guys and I want to be with like-minded patriots. It's the Faulkner County Tea Party in Conway at the McGee Center, 7 o'clock tonight. I'll be there. I would love to see you there. I would love to shake your hand, and you can ask me questions or whatever, as if like I have something interesting to say. Arkansas, we appreciate it. Tomorrow is Johnny Cash Friday. We'll see you then. Be safe.